Hey everybody, welcome back to The Car Guy on PeoriaLife.com. I'm Greg McCoy here with Brett Beachler. How you doing, Brett?
Good, Greg. How about yourself?
Doing wonderful. Wonderful. Today we're going to talk about do-it-yourself tips.
Yes.
So what can you tell us?
You might ask, why are you doing this again? So, overall, what I'm seeing, and you know me, Greg, I'm kind of a big picture guy, and I kind of like to break things down. What I'm seeing is a lot of folks that are just not apt to understanding their car and the simplicity of it. And I know it's complex, but it's also simple at the same time. And doing certain things like checking tires or checking oil levels or changing wipers. So I've kind of gotten a little bit of not necessarily a passion for it, but where possible, when people want to do this, it gives them more confidence on their car. It gives them more confidence in what they're doing. It doesn't keep them in the dark as to how things operate on their car. So I always try to encourage folks to go down that road of, hey, there are simple things that you can do if you want to do them, but we're obviously happy to take the stream of revenue when people don't know how to do things. But I also want people to know that there are things on their car that it's possible to do yourself. So one of the first ones I'll start off with is changing wiper blades. Actually a very simple procedure. So simple that we don't even charge to install wiper blades because it literally takes a man most of the time less than 60 seconds to go out and install new wiper blades. It used to be, you probably remember this, Greg, but it used to be you take the wiper blade off and then take the actual rubber portion out of it, and we'd call it refilling blades. But the problem is it takes time to do that, and the wiper blades are so inexpensive anymore that it doesn't make sense for us to charge somebody to do a refill and then save them $2 on one end and charge them $5 to do a refill install. So
like that's the way it is on almost everything.
Yeah,
it's cheaper to throw it away than just to repair.
Yeah, unfortunately. So air filter, sometimes very difficult to get to, sometimes not. Air filter, one of the key aspects of an air filter is when you remove an air filter out of your engine compartment, the way to test them to see if it is acceptable or not acceptable, you may know this, Greg, you probably know this from talking to me so much, most people don't know it, is to put the air filter up to a fluorescent light. If you can see light through it, put it back in the air filter compartment. If you're not able to see light, go get an air filter for it.
I think that's one of the things that if you go to a quick change place, quick oil change place, that's kind of one of the things they try to get people
It is a little overzealous. I've had guys come from other oil change places, and this is kind of humorous. I can tell people this, but I've had guys come in and say, "Oh, we need to put an air filter in this car," and we kind of go and double check it, kind of a cross check, and we go, "Nope, put it up to a fluorescent light. Let's see what it looks like." And okay, we'll put it back in. And it really took some muscle memory to break these guys that we don't replace air filters that aggressively. It's a very oversold item. And background information on the oil change industry. Car count's going down for them, so basically they're seeing fewer and fewer cars every year, so they've got one of two ways to gain more revenue, and that's to do add-ons, what we call that add-ons, of things like air filters and other things that they do on cars, or increase car count. And it's much easier to go do an add-on, that power steering, flush, and all that, than it is to go increase car count. Increasing car count's a tough thing to do. So headlights, we talked about this a little bit, but the headlights, most are simple, many are not anymore. We get a lot of headlights in the door that are literally, we have to remove part of the bumper, we have to remove part of the grill, we have to remove either wheel well, where the wheel well is, there's a black skirt inside the wheel well. We've got to remove that to gain access to the headlight from behind. Most people don't want to do that type of procedure. But for the do-it-yourselfer is the one that can be done. Sometimes if you got really small hands, you can reach down inside the engine compartment and gain access to the headlight from behind, which most headlights are accessed from behind the headlight assembly. So you got the outside headlight assembly, and then behind in the engine compartment is where you're reaching into it. So it can be done. The key is you two things. When you do your own headlight, don't touch the bulb. Okay, if the bulb gets oil on it, it can reduce the life of the bulb. Secondly, you got to make sure it's seated properly in the seal. It is sealed properly, because if any moisture gets inside there, it'll burn the headlight out. So I tell people this not to confuse them. I tell them to encourage them to do it right. And again, if you don't want to do it, obviously take it into a reputable shop or us, of course.
But that's so much easier most of the time than it used to be. You used to have to replace the whole glass assembly.
True.
Then you have to line it up, align
True.
it, and so forth, and it was a pain.
It was a pain. I've changed plenty of those in my lifetime, and it was a pain. There's no doubt about it. A lot of cut knuckles when you're trying to take those little tin frames out. And so the other thing when they switched to these headlights is it made the cars ever so lighter. Now the headlight assemblies are plastic, but the catch is these plastics are vulnerable to sunlight. They get what we call oxidation on them, and it will impair some of the light from coming out. So you got one of two choices when that happens: to either restore the headlights or replace them. And typically, to replace the entire headlight assembly is $250, $300. They're not inexpensive. So on one hand, they save the weight, but on the other hand, when they have the glass headlights, you never have the oxidation problem, ever.
That comes from sunlight.
That comes from sunlight.
So that's
UV
just
rays.
another argument to keep your car in a garage if at all possible.
That's a great argument
or
to
at
keep
least
it.
under
Yep.
a awning or something.
That's exactly right. Keep it covered. So replacing spark plugs, that's a little bit more challenging, especially on the newer vehicles. The area in which to gain access to these spark plugs is super tight anymore. Sometimes top of engine compartments have to come off. Sometimes we go through wheel wells. Sometimes we come from up underneath. 4-cylinder cars, typically you can replace your own spark plugs, generally speaking. V6s, V8s, it's not quite that way. They're really challenging. There are some spark plug procedures that'll take my guys who are really good 3 to 4 hours to replace them.
That's crazy.
It is crazy, but that's the way they design them. Engine compartments have gotten smaller, tighter. Cars have gotten lighter. With that comes additional costs to do these maintenance items. The good thing on spark plugs, most cars 100,000 miles. You're not changing them. Yep, you're not changing them every 10, 20, 30,000 miles. There are still, believe it or not, some vehicles out there that are changing them every 30,000. Jeep's a big one. They want them changed. Dodge does a few of their vehicles. Now they call them Rams. They're not Dodge Rams. They're just Rams. I just figured that out about a month ago. Oil change procedures. This is a little bit more tricky. I'll run through some topics on this. When you drain the oil, make sure you torque it properly going back in. And whenever you put that oil drain plug in, put it in with your finger first, the first few turns, to make sure you don't cross-thread it, and then torque it properly. You can over-torque a drain plug. The reason why I say this, a lot of the oil drain pans are now aluminum, okay? And if you over-torque it, I'm not that strong of a guy, but I can overspin an oil filter plug or an oil drain plug quite easily and then ruin a drain pan, and then guess what happens? $300, $400, $500 drain pan later, you're going to be sorry that you did that. So torque it properly. The catch is not everybody's got that right feel when they're torquing. You really need a torque wrench on there to do it right.
You use torque wrenches on that?
We don't, because our guys have such good feels. Most guys in the oil change industry, any mechanic has a good feel in terms of how far they need to go. So
you can also over torque the oil filter.
Yes, you can.
What happens when you do that?
The next guy's got a chore ahead of him. Whoever takes that oil filter off, if it's you, you're going to maybe be going into a shop. I've had customers come into the shop saying, hey, I've tried to change my oil. I can't get the oil filter off.
Or you can squeegee out the gasket and lose all of your oil.
Yeah, that takes a tremendous amount of torque
that happened
to
to
do
me
that.
once.
Yeah, it can happen. So be very careful. The key on the oil filter, when it makes contact, 1/2 turn is all you need. You don't need a turn and a half or 2 turns, and you don't need to be gritting when you put the thing on. It's 1/2 a turn when it goes on. So, got that? Fill oil with the proper amount of oil. That's pretty much a given. When you fill it, you always fill it, start the engine, check the transmission fluid, turn the engine off, let the oil settle for a minute or two, then you check the oil level again. That's your cross-check is what we call it in our industry. Check the oil level again. Fill fluids. Make sure you're filling the fluids with the proper fluids. I can't tell you how many times I've had people come in the door and they've got power steering fluid in their washer solvent tank or vice versa. One of the simple ones to do is brake fluid. You put the wrong fluid in there, you got to flush out the whole brake system. It affects seals. If you get an oil inside of a brake fluid reservoir, it's a bad deal. Ends up costing the customer quite a bit of money to do that. So inspect all your exterior lights. I always explain to people, get a second person to do this because it's very difficult to check brake lights. You're not fast enough to go back there and check brake lights. Or have a reflective surface that you can see your lights off of. So good idea to do that. Inspect wipers for tears on the end. Typically they start tearing at the end before they do in the middle. Or check for them to be what I call the cooked or the baked position, where they've sat, wipers actually go back and forth, and they change position when they go back and forth. Sun can actually cook them into one position. If the car sits out in the sun, it'll cook them, and then you'll hear the infamous chatter one way and non-chatter the other way on wipers. So be watching for that. The belt, when you're inspecting the belt, 6 cracks per inch. If you look at that belt, that serpentine belt, most cars have one belt anymore. They used to have 3 or 4. They've consolidated it down into one belt for most vehicles.
So you could say just the belt.
The belt,
You don't
correct.
have to differentiate this belt or that belt.
That's usually correct. 6 cracks per inch is the key. If you basically take about an inch of an area and you see more than 6 cracks, it's time for you to replace your belt. It's not going to break tomorrow. That's the good news. It won't break tomorrow, but
Probably.
you want to get it taken care of pretty quickly. The catches with belts doing it yourself they're tricky. You got to get them on the right grooves. You got to get them on the right pulleys. If you get it off one groove, it'll ruin the belt. And there goes your investment in the belt. So, brake pads, rotors, things like that, those are probably a little bit more tricky. I myself don't encourage people to change their own brakes because some things can go wrong with brakes. We get a lot of do-it-yourselfers that come in with complaints of noises. So when they do the brakes, they don't clean out all what they call a caliper slides, which is where the brake pads slide onto. They don't lubricate them, and they'll come in with squeaks. Or you'll get a case where people will actually have a sticky brake pad. One will wear super fast because of stickiness, and the other one won't wear as fast. So there goes your money out the door for replacing brake pads, and then you'll end up having to replace rotors down the road too. So timing belts, I really discourage people trying to do timing belts at home. If you get one tooth off on a timing belt, you'll ruin an engine. All it takes is one tooth. My best techs are the guys that do timing belts, and that's how it is. So some proper tools. You want a good set of socket wrenches. Swivel sockets are super nice with extensions. Complete set of open end and box wrenches. Screwdrivers, pliers, vice grips, specialty tool for oil filter remover. We have oil filter removers are kind of a band that cinches down on the oil filter. Those are actually nice to have. I myself, when I change the oil in my car, use my hand because I'm the one that tightens and secures it all the time. So I know it's not over torqued. Typically, most oil filters should be able to be removed with a hand. Just saying, if it takes an oil filter wrench, somebody probably over tightened the oil filter. So, just some highlights on do-it-yourself and do-it-yourself type tips. Like I said, if you don't have the confidence, obviously bring it into us or a reputable shop. But if you ever want to learn, we do offer car care classes, typically annually, where people can do simple things, like checking the air in the tire. One of the things I didn't talk about is check the air in the tires when the tires are cold, not necessarily when you've been driving around the road course for an hour and a half, because tires pressures generally will be higher, as you and I know.
What about YouTube?
YouTube's a fantastic source.
I mean, you can find how to do anything.
Yes, you can.
You don't know if it's right or wrong.
Yes.
But there'll be tips out there.
I have seen many folks use YouTube. I've actually seen, a couple times my techs will pull up things on YouTube and just, all right, is this thing being done right? Is it not being done right? The sources are out there are fantastic. Again, it boils down to, do you want to take that time? I mean, there are certain things in my home I don't do myself. I just don't have the patience. I don't have the time. What takes me 4 hours might take a professional to do an hour. To me, that kind of stuff doesn't make sense for me.
Yep.
So.
All right. Well, we've run through our time already.
We have.
Quick show today. So thanks a lot for the do-yourself tips. And hopefully, thanks for joining us again today. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time on The Car Guy and PRLF.com. Thanks.
Thank you.